right, welcome back everyone to What the Hall's Going On. My name is Chloe Anderson and I'll be hosting this episode alone today because Brayden Fells is in Green Dot training. And we have a very special guest host. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Nic Stelter. Great to be on the podcast. I'm really happy to be here. I am an RA in Helser Hall. I'm the president of NRHH. So a couple different reasons why I'm here. Yeah, absolutely. The National Residence Hall Honorary is an honor society within the Department of Residence. It's open to all student leaders. That can be House Council, Hall Council, RAs, IRHA Parliament. We'd love to have you. Our three pillars are service, recognition, and leadership. We do service events. We have our platform, Rising Resident, where you can express your gratitude to a member of housing who has positively impacted you. That can be your roommate, your RA, your hall director, anyone in your house cabinet, your custodian, your facility staff, really anybody who's gone out of their way to make your life better in the department. And then leadership, we try and do professional development activities and a few things to build up our members during our meetings. But it's really exciting because this is our second year back. I am the second club president in our reinvigorated org. So it's a really exciting time, and we're hoping to do some big things this year.
Do you want to talk about the service event coming up?
Absolutely, I would love to. So this Sunday, October 22nd, from 11 to 1, we have a campus cleanup going on. We are really excited because we have a higher turnout this year than last year already. We have more sign-ups, so that'll be really exciting. And for any of you who might have had the chance to scan that QR code but saw that some of the spots were all full, we have expanded that. We would love to see you all there. That is open to all residents. We have cookies, hot chocolate, apple cider. That's first come, first serve. But we would love to see you there. This is going to be a fun service event, and I'm really excited for it. We'll have great weather, so.
Yeah. And if it is in collaboration with IRHA, so you did get an email from me earlier this week if you live on campus with a little link to sign up if the QR code isn't working for you guys. So do you want to talk more about RA stuff now, if that's all for NRHH?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
That's
awesome.
my quick shameless plug for NRHH, but the meat and potatoes is RA stuff. We both know the application opened up this week. That's open through December 3rd. A little bit more about that before we talk a little bit about my experience personally, and I have my phone out just to make sure we get this right. But those applications close December 3rd. The first status update will be Friday, January 19th. RA interviews are going to be held in Joffrey Hall, Monday, February 5th through February 9th. They're all that week. The first round of job offers and notifications will be at the end of February. And if you get waitlisted there, know that that's not where your story ends, because people still will reject offers or decide that the RA position isn't for them. So if that's where you receive some news that you might not have been hoping for, trust me, it does come back. Speaking from personal experience, I was somebody who was waitlisted, and I might be a little biased, but some of the best RAs I know were waitlisted.
I would agree with that statement, I would say. Do you just want to generally talk about what being an RA is like, kind of the job responsibilities, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest things are your 4 hours at the hall desk and then your duty nights, but those depend on your community. I am fortunate enough to be on a big staff in Helser. There's 13 of us, so I only have to be on duty every so often, and some of the apartment communities or other residence halls give you flexibility with when you sign up. So I actually do all of my duty nights in 1 week. A little bit of background, I'm an elementary education major, so not a lot of finals, not a lot of stress. So I usually take all of finals week because, one, that frees up my staff, and then two, nobody's doing anything because everybody has finals, and when students are done with finals, they get up and go home. So those are usually pretty stress-free.
So if you do get the position in Helser, life hack for you, unless Nick is there next year, then don't do that because he's already coming for the finals week.
I want him. But no, it's nothing too crazy. It's that. There are door decks that you got to make every semester, but those are fun. Those are cute. Bulletin boards, obviously, you got to throw some events. You oversee your house council, and then all RA staffs have collaterals in some capacity. Those are little side jobs or subcategories of the RA position. I am the hall council liaison, but in the past I've worked at the hall desk to make sure things were nice and tidy there. and then some will have an events planning, or some will have community space bulletin boards that you need to make. But no, it's pretty straightforward. Those are your main responsibilities. If you're asking about a specific community, or any of you have questions, get in touch with an RA or hall director in that building. They'd love to be able to fill you in.
So I'm gonna kind of throw it back a little bit more on your hiring story and what that kind of looked like for you.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I interviewed in 2021. It was our first year back doing in-person interviews. So mine were in Joffrey. I applied early, mostly because my housing for the next year was in limbo a little bit. I had a roommate who wasn't particularly apt to sign on an apartment, even though I wanted to, and he ended up signing in an apartment, and it was great. But it was one of those things that you don't really know it when you see it, but it really pointed me in the direction of an RA, and it turned into being a job that I loved. So really fortunate for that. But yeah, that's really the only reason I applied. But no, then apply, interview, and as I mentioned, I was one of the people who didn't get the job at the start. I was kicking myself over the interview, but that's okay because I didn't realize how many people do get waitlisted and do get picked up for whatever reason. But I remember walking into the interview, not really knowing what to expect. This was the first interview that I've had since I interviewed to work at an Adidas store in an outlet mall back home. So it wasn't really anything I was ready for, but any tips for people who need them? Know, be able to give experiences when you felt community. That's really important. Talk about your work-life balance, talk about ways that you've been involved at Iowa State. Really, and I don't want to make too many assumptions about your listenership, but if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already off on the right foot to get a job or be well-connected enough to hear about an open spot and a hall director that might be looking.
So we kind of talked about how you didn't get the job at first. How competitive would you say RA interviews usually are?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends year to year, but this year we have a lot of people who are excited to apply that I know. I know last year we were over 300 applicants and right around 300 interviews. There are roughly 180 to 200 spots on campus for RAs. That includes all of the res halls, all of the suites, as well as the apartment communities and all the way down in towers. Everywhere is looking like it's going to be open, so we'll have spots. We don't always know how many because RAs need to fill out their intent to return. Sometimes co-ops come up, sometimes study abroad opportunities come up. But yeah, we're usually talking a few hundred people interviewing for far less than that many spots. So it's one of those things, if you do interview and you think it went well and it doesn't end up the way you wanted, always worth waiting, seeing what your options are, because you can definitely get picked up. One little bit of advice I would say is sign up to live on campus next year. One, because that shows that you have a commitment to living on campus, but also it's way less of a nightmare to accept the position, because then the housing people, the lovely folks in 2419, will take care of your housing contract. If you signed up to live off campus, that means you got to try and figure out a sublease or back out of your contract or whatever you made with whatever apartment or house you signed off on. So would absolutely recommend signing up to live on campus if you're planning on being an RA.
Shout out to the folks in 2419, right next to the IRHA office. So let's say you do get the position. How much time does being an RA take away from like your general school work, just kind of being a college student?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest concerns that people have when applying to be an RA, because they don't know what all goes in on the back end. For the most part, RAs are kind of off in their own when they're in their own communities, so it can be a little bit ambiguous what goes on behind closed doors. But like I mentioned, it's the 4 desk hours that every RA is contracted, those handful of duty nights. But it does kind of vary on the week. If there are door decks or bulletin boards due, usually it's a little bit more that week. But honestly, I can't say I'm working, too many more hours than my, 4 or 5 a week. Obviously, you got to interact with your community. You have events that you need to host. But one of the interesting parts about the RA job is that it's a 24/7 position. Somebody can knock on your door at 3 a.m. and if you are asleep, don't feel obligated to answer or feel bad that you missed them. But If you run into residents in the hallway, you say hi, and those aren't hours that you clock, but that's also not anything I would consider to be working. So
Yeah.
it is an interesting balance, and I know myself personally might not be the best example, as Chloe knows, and as I mentioned before, I'm an elementary education major.
Super
So
busy all the
yes,
time. Learning how to read, learning how to count.
absolutely, absolutely. So I don't feel too much of that pressure with schoolwork. Obviously, things come up. I have projects, I have papers, I have lesson plans due. But no, I mean, I have friends who are engineers. I have friends who are double majoring. There are lots of great people who are able to balance out those responsibilities. So if you think that your schooling or your classes might take up too much time, know that there is some flexibility within the position, and hall directors and other RAs are generally willing to work with you on that.
So one of the questions I had received that was something that someone wanted to ask is, who do RAs go to when they need help? Because typically residents would go to like you guys if they needed help with something like either mentally or like with something like in their community. So like, what would you do if you had a problem?
Yeah, I have been extremely fortunate. I have two great hall directors over in Helser. Tina and Buffalo are fantastic. R.I.P. Buffalo. he,
He's fully alive and he's doing
he
well. The
yes,
way you phrased that made it sound like Buffalo wasn't quite doing
Buffalo
great.
is alive and
Buffalo is
well. I
in
want to make
good
that
health.
abundantly clear. Buffalo's good. He just accepted a position in Oklahoma. He's moving back closer to family, so we're all really happy for him. That's really exciting stuff. But that does mean that we're all sad to see him leave as a Helser Hall director. But we'll have Cody. He'll be back in Helser. So I mean, I also know that I've been really fortunate with my RA staff. The Helser staff the last couple of years has been super supportive of each other and everyone's needs. So I've been really happy, but I do know that across the department, and I don't want to speak to everybody's personal experiences, but I felt really supported in my position. Supervisors are flexible. Area coordinators are great people to go to if you have a little bit larger scale issues. And they're always good about explaining policies and why we're doing things the way that we are, because sometimes for RAs and especially residents, it can be tricky to see why things are shaking out a certain way. But no, I think we in the housing department have a great support staff. So I've been blessed to not have to worry about that too much.
I feel very fortunate. All of the hall directors that I have the fortune of interacting with on a day-to-day basis are all like super great people, and they'd be great to go to if you have any problems. Just kind of generally, what's your favorite part about being an RA? Just the things you like about the position.
No,
And I
I've
mean,
been
if you want to tell some stories, go for it. Whatever you want to talk about.
I am not the person to go to for crazy duty night stories for whatever reason. And it's not just the finals week thing, because I do have duty nights throughout the semester and whatever that I take care of. But I just haven't had any crazy duty night
You're just too busy on your
stories.
Kindle Fire
I
reading.
know. I read and I play games on my iPad and
And then
I
I
go to
actually
bed
switch
at
and
yeah.
you go to bed. That's all.
No, I mean it's pretty laid back. So I don't have too many crazy stories. I know some of the other RAs would talk about exit signs getting ripped down, having to deal with drunk residents at 3 a.m. Some crazier things like that. I know some roommate conflicts get to be a little weird, but all in a day's work, I guess. That feels a little bit reductive, but it is what it is.
It
We
is,
make do.
yeah.
Keep on chugging. But no, I think my absolute favorite part of the job is just the connections, the relationships that you get to build. There's really no better way to connect with residents right when they get here, because really, your freshman year classes, your professors are teaching to a lecture hall of 200 people at some points. Um, TAs are TAs. Some of them are there
Some of
just to
them
get
are
paid.
not there. It depends.
Yep. To your point, some of them are not there, but as an RA, you're really the first and one of the only people that a student in their freshman year can go to as a resource and as a staff member, who isn't just their friend's cousin's older brother who also happens to go to Iowa State. You're a really good resource for your residents, and that's something that I take a lot of pride in. But yeah, it's the connections for sure. I still have residents who see me in the dining halls They'll come up and say hi, talk to me about last year, and oh, how's your group this year? We were probably better residents, right? Interesting
The
how,
Helser dogs.
yeah, exactly. The Helser dogs. Shout out the Helser dogs. But no, I mean it's truly special to see some of the relationships you get to build and see how they mesh with each other. This is an unofficial stat, but I think I have at least 50% of my residents last year living with each other in some capacity again this year, so that's always good. Love to see those relationships form, and honestly, that might be a unique to Helser thing because, in my biased opinion, we have the best community on campus.
As someone who has exclusively lived in suites, that makes it sound so pretentious. As someone who's only lived in suites, not in a pretentious way, I do feel like Helser is, whenever I like go visit over there, I do feel like it's the best community I've seen so far on campus. I feel like there's something to be said for not having air conditioning and everyone being just in the den, being miserable and like playing pool and sweating and hot and sleeping on the floor. Like, I feel like that definitely helps build community in a really weird way somehow.
It's the joint trauma Helser.
It just has to be.
Everybody, I lived in the fourth floor in Helser my freshman year.
Shout out
Been
to-
an RA on the fourth floor in
Shout out to
Helser.
Firkins.
Yeah, shout out to Firkins, shout out to Richie. It gets hot up there. I know right at the start of the year we had a couple maintenance guys doing a few things on the roof, and I don't know.
Just hanging out.
Didn't
up there.
ask, but they
Not
said
your
it
problem.
was cooler up on the roof in 95-degree weather than it was on the fourth floor.
What a great day to live in Buchanan this year, because that is one of the only places where the AC did not go out on campus when the fire happened.
Well, that and for a while there, the RA rooms in some of the non-AC dorms were one of the only places that did have air conditioning on campus
Oh, that's probably
because
something good to mention about the RA job. If
Yes.
you do get an air-conditioned room at
yes,
Helser.
little known fact, maybe this isn't little known, but RAs in non-air conditioned buildings do get their own window unit, which is a blessing, an absolute blessing. Not that you need to flex it to your residents.
Please don't. They won't like that. But
don't.
anyways, back to the whole fire story.
No, I was one of the few people who did have air conditioning during that whole debacle. So I love that, but it's exactly that lack of AC that gives Helser its charm. Everybody being a little bit sweatier than they like to be, not sleeping on their or under their comforter for the first month of classes. It sounds worse than it actually is, I promise.
It sounds like miserable, but like every time I go over there, everyone's having such a good time. They're hanging out, they're talking to each other. It really isn't like a bad experience. Everyone just like has a good time with it, and they're like, "This sucks, but oh well."
It sucks, but we're in it together, and,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the whole point. That's what I love about it.
You can just turn to literally anyone by you and be like, "You know this sucks, right?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, this is terrible," and then just go about your day.
No, the amount of times I've seen almost this exact script play out. Somebody would be like, "Oh, it's so hot." Yeah, it is. Oh, I haven't slept under my blankets in the entire time I've been here. Oh, yeah, it makes me miss my bed at home. Oh, where are you from? And then boom, now you have two people who are friends, and
And
then
now
they
they're
go to the
roommates
dining
now.
hall together. Yes, and then they live together the next year.
I would like to imagine this is a very specific story of something that happened last year, and like this is like
I've just seen it. That's just how it goes. People come in and they complain, and parents come in when they're moving in. They're like, "Yeah, everything seems good with the room. We just haven't found the air conditioner yet," or something like that. And it's corny jokes like that that make it easy to move in because it does
Yeah.
get really hot those days. But everyone's usually in good spirits until you have moms in tears and dads are a little sweatier because they just assembled IKEA furniture for the last 2 hours.
and
But
now they're posting on the parent Facebook group saying how much they miss their kid and everything's
Mm-hmm.
sad, and now you're like, "Oh, I feel bad."
yeah, but all
It is
part
what
of the
it is.
highs and lows of moving.
All in a day's work.
Yep.
One of my stories from moving is me and Brayden. We went and we were like handing out candy to residents, like introducing ourselves. And almost every room we went to, they were like, "It's really hot," and because we walked around Helser, they're like, "It's really Helser and Towers" were the two places we went to, and we either said, "It's really hot, I don't know," or like they would be like, "Do you know like when I can move to like a different building?" Like they were like, "It's just really hot in here, and I don't know how I feel about it." But it sounds like, from what I've heard from the RAs from those different houses that we went to, that everyone's actually really liking living in there after the whole air conditioning thing kind of settled down and it's cold out.
Yeah, it's
Cold
usually
air quotes. It's like 70 out right now.
yeah. cold enough to sleep. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, it's the first few weeks, month-ish. That's a little tough. But after that, you're on an even playing field with everyone on campus. So
Fair. Speaking of RAs, one of our very special RA friends has a question for you. I think you might know what I'm about to ask. Was
Unfortunately.
Charlie's grandpa from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory a bad guy?
Yes, he was. A little bit of context to this question. One of my good friends, Helser RA Noah, we can be seen frequently in heated debate. Typically
in public also.
typically in public. Noah's my usual dinner date, so we usually find something to bicker at each other about. One night in particular, it was Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I'm usually an optimistic person. I like to see the good in people, but
Hence the shirt.
hence the shirt. Mental health matters. Maybe Uncle or Grandpa Joe was going through a tough time, but
I don't think so.
no, the way he sprung out of bed when Charlie was like, "Hey, check this out. I got a golden ticket," and then he was like, "Okay, fine, I can walk now."
But he couldn't walk before that.
Couldn't walk before that.
And I don't mean to diminish his struggles in life, but it does sound a little bit suspicious.
Just a little bit. When you got the single mother in there,
And she's
putzing
trying her
around,
best. She's working.
trying so hard, cooking dinner, trying to provide for the family.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
And Noah Ross sees that, and he thinks,
He's misunderstood. He just thinks he's
a quirky guy.
Yeah, that's something that I'm sure Noah will still disagree with after hearing that we discussed this on the podcast.
Argument? I'm confused where he's coming from on this.
You know what? Since he's not here to defend himself, I'm just gonna say that he has none.
Okay.
None at all.
Fair. Noah Ross clap back next week.
Yeah.
We'll get him in here sometime so he can just defend himself for the whole podcast.
Yeah, we'll just have to book him in the studio. He can come in here by himself and scream into the void.
It's just him screaming for like half an hour.
Yeah, I don't know. And it was interesting because Noah has a lot of takes that I agree with, some that I don't. We go back and forth. But we're also both fairly good about like, oh, I was wrong. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. We can reason with each other. But that one, he just would not give up, and I don't know why.
And it was so bad. We all went to Grandma Mojo's that night. And I remember they showed up and they asked me my thoughts on it. They were like, do you think that Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is a bad person? And I'm like, I don't think he was like a great guy. Like, like I just thought that he like wasn't really the best character. But like also everyone else is a little bit more morally not great than he was. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I thought that was like kind of the whole point of the book is that everyone was kind of a little bit morally not the best person. So
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
guess.
from a fundamental like literary standpoint, like he's not supposed to be a good
No.
person. Like
No,
that
but
is the
really
point.
nobody is.
In the
Yeah.
book, Charlie's like he's just hanging out.
It's just Charlie.
It's just Charlie,
It's
and then a
just
bunch
Charlie.
of bad people, truthfully.
Yeah.
And chocolate.
And chocolate,
And chocolate.
of course, as the name suggests. And I actually haven't read the book, I'll be honest.
Neither have I. But I understand like media analysis.
Yeah.
Not sure if you do as an
Well,
English education major.
Yeah.
But, you know, hopefully.
No, well. And
Jury's still out.
Jury's still out. But no, usually as a book over the movie person, it feels a little bit incongruent for me not to have read the book. But
I feel like this isn't helping your argument. I feel like Noah's gonna use this against you.
you're probably right. Shoot.
Something else that you're passionate about outside of Grandpa Joe being a bad person. And I already regret asking this question. The twins.
The
How's that
Minnesota
been going
Twins.
recently?
So for those of you listening, my entire life has led up to me being given headphones and a microphone and a platform, and then getting asked a question about the Minnesota Twins. This is
I knew going into this
incredible.
podcast this wasn't gonna be it. This is
If you take away
projected
nothing
to go
else,
downhill.
never mind the RA stuff. Who even is Grandpa Joe? This is about the Twins now. From Minnesota, huge Twins fan.
Side note. I would like to imagine that Grandpa Joe and Grandma Mojo from Grandma Mojo's. I'd like to imagine that they know each other.
Yeah, they do. It's probably canon
in the
at
canon
this point.
of my head.
Yeah.
But the twins.
In the
most
canon of
important part
Chloe's
this podcast.
visions, also includes TC Bear, Twins mascot.
Clearly.
Clearly.
Huge fan of him.
Naturally.
No idea what he looks like. I will be putting a photo up.
He's a bear.
I would imagine, as his name is.
It's that easy.
TC Bear, Twin City Bear.
Yes.
So.
Fairly self-explanatory.
It is very self-explanatory. There will be a photo of the Twin City Bear somewhere.
But no, I mean the Twins, they wrapped up their postseason. They won a playoff game for the first time in 18 years. That's absolutely incredible, not only for myself, but for the Twin Cities, the city of Minnesota. Truly incredible stuff. Unfortunately, the Astros just have our number, but at least it wasn't the Yankees this year. I would be more heartbroken about the loss, but the Astros aren't doing too hot anymore, and the Twins will be back. They'll be back.
In the words of Nic Stelter, every time the Twins win on his private story, quote, "We are so back."
It was a roller coaster watching those playoff games, and unfortunately one that wasn't a whole lot of fun to be a part of because most of the time the Twins weren't scoring too many runs. But Lightning Rod, Royce Lewis, Edward Julian.
Totally know who they are.
Yes, Chloe knows who those people are.
Big Twins fan.
Huge Twins fan.
Twins fan.
But yeah, now that that's done, I can actually go back to getting homework done and making bulletin boards and actually interacting with my residents because there's no more Twins baseball to watch.
It's for a couple months of the year. Nick's life solely revolves around the Twins. That is all there is. And ironically, like that is the only reason why I know anything about the Twins is because I'll see you posting about the Twins on your story. I'll be like, oh, the Twins lost.
Worst day ever.
And then every once in a blue moon, oh, the Twins won.
Best day ever.
Best day ever.
Best day
because
ever.
It only ever happens a couple times. You can't have best days ever all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. Some days I do feel like Barbie. I wake up, I do my yoga, go take a shower in the lovely Firkins bathroom.
Firkins bathroom. Cleanest place on earth.
And then I'm just smiling. I go down to the hall desk. It's just a Barbie day.
Like the good Barbie.
Yeah, like the one like before the water's cold and
like
her milk is
terrible.
expired and the waffles burnt. Yeah.
Barbie,
Yes.
but not the plot of the entire movie.
Yeah, just like the first part. That's like me like every day, basically.
Basically the first 15 minutes of Barbie, and then the rest of the movie, you just pretend like it's not happening. None of that happened in your mind.
Yeah, pretty much. And
Okay,
I would know
okay.
I've seen Barbie 3 times in theaters.
In theaters, too.
So
Not at Cyclone Cinema, because Nic
um,
Stelter did not support Cyclone Cinema this
Nic
year.
Stelter did not support Cyclone Cinema.
I support Cyclone Cinema.
Chloe Anderson, Cyclone
Cyclone
Cinema
Cinema
supporter.
fan. I am.
Quite literally too, because IRHA signs a check for Cyclone Cinema. So
This is true. But also personally, as a person, I too support Cyclone Cinema. Even though I haven't had time to make it in a while, but I support them.
that's what big IRHA wants you to think.
Big IRHA. If you ask some people, some people I know would refer to me as Big IRHA.
Yep.
Apparently, in the eyes of some people.
Mhm.
So
It's Braden Fells and Big IRHA.
Big IRHA. That's my only name. Big IRHA. That's me.
IRHA Barbie.
IRHA Barbie. That's me. I'm IRHA Barbie.
Yeah.
And you're
I don't know. My
elementary
Ken job
education
is
Ken.
RA. I
RA
don't know.
Ken. That's too.
Eh.
That was the whole point in the movie. Is that the Kens didn't actually have jobs.
Now we're getting into some really, important media
important
criticism.
media analysis. Well, here's the thing: is the Kens don't actually have real jobs, and I've talked this out with B-fellas before. And so, what would your Ken job be if Kens don't have real jobs?
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Twins
It can't.
Ken?
Yeah, it would have to be Minnesota Twins. Maybe.
Taylor Swift fan Ken?
Yeah, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. Somebody else is definitely bigger enough to be Taylor Swift Ken.
I would say.
I'd maybe be like iPad Ken, Mario Kart Ken.
Kindle Fire Ken?
Yeah.
Goodreads Ken?
Yeah, Goodreads Ken. Follow me on Goodreads. Almost there on my reading challenge. My goal is a book a week this year. We're so close.
Have you been sticking to that?
Yeah, I'm ahead of pace. Slowing down a little bit. Things are picking up before I go to practicum here next week, but excited for that. Got to get through Demon Copperhead. Shout out the ISU Blood Drive for handing me that book. It was a weird.
That seems like
Yeah.
Name alone, I'm confused why that's the blood drive book.
Yeah, we're gonna rewind a little.
I would love
bit.
some context to that story.
Signed up for the blood drive.
Best RA ever.
Yes.
Donating blood.
Donating blood. I went there. I'm O positive, most common blood type. Shout out to everybody else who's O positive, I guess.
Okay, Nick is really basic.
But no, then they asked if I want to do a power red donation. I've done a power red donation before. They take your red blood cells, they put your plasma back, basically the opposite of a plasma donation. But then I got done. I went over, I had my cookies, my juice, whatever. And then they had a wheel that you could spin to win a prize. And the extremely kind people said, you don't need to spin the wheel.
They just looked at you and they knew what you wanted.
No, I went over. I was like, oh, I really like, I would like that book. That's like a $30 hardcover brand new book. How do I get it? And they're like, oh, if you just post something on your Instagram story shouting us out, you can have it.
I don't recall an Instagram story post. Did you scam the lovely people at the blood drive?
Why would I? Nic Stelter, generous with
No,
my
I
blood
believe
and
you.
my time.
I believe you.
I promise most of my books I check out through the library. The Ames
your
Public
public
Library
libraries.
is fantastic. Go get a library card. If you don't know, you can use the app Libby and connect your library card, and you can read them digitally on a Kindle. I promise. How to read the most books ever? Do that.
This is just a bunch of shout outs. The entire podcast is just us shouting things out.
Yeah.
I believe the library, don't they have like a little bus that they bring like outside of the parks library?
Yep.
Yeah. They have popcorn. You can sign up for a library card.
Book
Little
mobile.
bus full of books.
I believe it's Thursdays from 11 to 2 or 11 to 1 or 10 to something or noon to something. Thursdays
I'm just walking around and
lunchtime.
I say, oh, there's the bus.
Yeah, incredible
Good
bus.
service.
Yeah,
your
they
public
go all
libraries.
around Ames. And fun fact, the design on the bus was actually done by an author and illustrator who graduated from Iowa State.
Oh, the more you know. I did not know that.
The more
I feel
you
like
know.
I learned a lot about the public library today.
As you should.
Like beforehand, I was just like, oh, Ames Public Library, that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, Ames Public Library, super fan.
Support your public libraries because they have all the books you could ever want. They have an amazing children's section. They have a teens section. They have
They
movies.
also have adults sections.
Yes,
They don't just have the
yes.
teens and the kids.
Yes. The entire top floor. It's a great study space. Parks library, but better. That might be a hot take. I don't know. I don't think so, though.
Gonna get canceled by Iowa State University. They're gonna contact you personally and say, take that down right now.
Well, they're going to contact you. This is your podcast. You
this
rub
is
me
my
on.
podcast. However, what's the IRHA podcast?
Wow.
That being said,
You are IRHA by extension.
I am, according to some people, as we previously discussed, big IRHA.
Big IRHA.
So
But also, circling back a little bit farther, Noah was trying to argue with me about the necessity of public libraries and the resource that they could provide. I don't want to get into it because
I don't.
I
Either,
was
because
right
I don't
and
want to
he was
dog
wrong.
On Noah, but was
I don't know.
was his
It
argument
was
that you don't need libraries?
well, his argument was mostly that he thinks the resources that they provide could be skewed a little bit more to 21st century technologies and stuff, and I argued that they were, and then it all just boiled down to Noah not knowing enough about what public libraries actually do.
He tries his best.
He does.
Plus Noah.
He does. I love Noah.
We love Noah. However, sometimes some of Noah's takes are, not a little bit questionable, I would argue.
We're dogging on Noah a little bit, but I promise Noah is
love Noah.
90% of the time he hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, this is true. We were talking about this earlier, like before we came to the podcast. We were talking about how Noah isn't really like the most talkative of people, but when he does talk, it's like really funny every time. Like it is something like worth like talking for. It's
Yeah.
like something valuable. I feel
Yep.
like
Doesn't mince his words.
does have bad takes sometimes, but
We all do.
we all do. Well, not me because I'm IRHA Barbie, and as extension, Barbie's perfect. If we're ignoring the last hour and 45 minutes of the movie.
Okay. Yeah. Fair. We did conveniently decide to ignore that part, so
Yeah. So.
that makes sense. That fits.
Yep.
Okay. I guess to wrap up a little bit, one, we talked a lot about Noah today, but I do want to shout out the Helser staff. Love the Helser staff. They're amazing.
Great people. Love them all.
Fantastic people. No better staff on campus. Once again, biased.
I will be
However-
seeing some of them tonight at Grandma Mojo's, so I am a little bit biased to say that they are also a good staff.
You know where to apply. It's Iowa State Resident Assistant. You click on that. It'll open you up in StarRes, fill out the application there. I would encourage you to get a reference from an RA in your building. It doesn't have to be your RA, but that does go a long way because those are also people who can vouch for you during the hiring process. If a hall director or their hall director says, hey, who did you talk to that stood out to you? That's a really good resource. Remember, that application closes December 3rd. You'll find out the status of your interview in early January. Know that if you have a 2.5 GPA, you're in good academic standing, and you meet all the other requirements, your application looked good, you're likely to get an interview. Come prepared for that. It'll be a couple rounds of group interviews. It'll be you and then a resident assistant and then some professional staff paired with them, just so you know what to expect, because I know that was one of the big shocks for me going in.
I thought you meant group, as in like there's like a group of people applying to be an RA. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's strange.
I haven't interviewed.
That makes significantly more sense, though.
Yeah, no, I haven't interviewed, and I'm a teacher. I
He just
could
walks
walk
in.
into a
There's teacher
school.
shortage. He walks
and-
in and they're like, you're perfect for it. Sure.
Yeah, I'm a male special education teacher who wants to teach K through 2, and then they'd be like, okay, can you start like tomorrow or like the day after?
Shout out to our teachers.
Shout out to teachers. I feel like every negative thing that's come up about me is negated by the fact that
immediately wiped away because you're a teacher.
yes.
And you're going to be a good teacher, too.
Thank you.
I think so, at least.
Thank you.
Not
you.
to wrap up me dogging on you for the entire podcast. I do think that you're a good RA, and I do think that you're a good teacher. So
There you have it, on record from Chloe
record.
Anderson.
unless I edited that part out, we'll see.
Yeah.
I might leave it in there. I might not.
We'll see. It is all in her hands now, but I would encourage all of you who are considering to apply to be an RA to do so. It is the most rewarding job I've ever held. An absolutely incredible experience. Looks great on a resume. Plus, free housing, free meal plan, monthly stipend. Who wouldn't want that?
So true. All right, I think that's all for us today. Unless you had anything else you wanted to plug outside of.
You know,
Being
this
an
got a
RA?
little rambly already, so
This is very rambly. I feel like that's good, but
I think we just got to
Better than
wrap it
strong
up. Shut the mics off. Get me out of here.
okay, fair. Nick has had enough of hanging out with me, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all next week. So.
Yes, thank you again for having me, Chloe.